That is the number that you can't run away. It's the only thing that you cannot pay that will close you down. Paying people and paying your rent are the two things that you cannot avoid. So you have to make sure those are in line.
Now, one of the things that I pay attention to, and for people that want to, it's interesting that you said, hey, if you want to be in the food business, like you need to be passionate about it. And I find that most of the time people just want to own a big name just because it's a big name and they think it makes a lot of money. But what people don't often know is that food businesses tend to have lower profit margins. So can you speak on that from your experience? Like what were the type of margins as a percentage that you guys were looking for in your restaurants? And like what were the things you were doing to manage profitability or move the needle?
Well, when you run a portfolio of restaurants, it typically breaks down. You can have 33% are winners, 33% are the average, and 33% are going to be challenging. So the winners make up for the challenging. You usually end up somewhere in the middle. So you'll have stores. A lot of it, Tariq, is depending upon occupancy cost.
And when you say occupancy
And
costs, can you just, for the purpose of people listening, what do you mean by that specifically?
your rent structure and what it costs you to be there, primarily rent structure. The biggest absorption of cash flow is your rent structure. It's the biggest liability that any business owner has if you're leasing, because if your lease is $40,000 a year and you've got a 5-year lease, that's a $200,000 liability. So typically speaking, what mostly fails concepts is too much rent per square foot. When you look at your investments for a restaurant, it is critical to see what your return on investment is per square foot. I don't care if you're in the best spot. If it's 25 square foot plus CAM, you're looking at 29, you still have to cover that. Whether it's you're closed because of snow, whether the city comes up and puts up barriers in front of your restaurants because they're doing road construction, that is the number that you can't run away. It's the only thing that you cannot pay that will close you down. You can push off your food vendor. Basically, labor, paying people, and paying your rent are the two things that you cannot avoid. So you have to make sure those are in line. Now, especially if you're going into a new concept, I see this all the time. I have people coming to me that have bought into new concepts and they've paid a good sum of money for the franchise fee and the build out, but then the franchisor doesn't provide them the coaching to get the right lease component, the right occupancy cost. I've seen some at $17 a square foot and they're doing $300,000 in sales. I mean, it just doesn't work. So be very, very cautious about your occupancy cost. Should not be more than 12%. Your goal would be between 8 and 10. So if your revenue numbers are not showing occupancy costs less than 12%, I would say that's a huge red flag.
Interesting. If you enjoyed this short clip from the podcast, you can check out another short clip right here. Or if you want to watch the full episode of this podcast, you can watch that here. And remember, knowledge is not power. It's applied knowledge that's power. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.